Hello, I'm Götz, I'm German and I've been living in Cebu City, Philippines for over 10 years now. I get a lot of requests for advice on dating matters, so let's dive into a really crucial topic, married women and the risks involved in getting to know a married woman in the Philippines. If you are searching for a life partner, there's one thing you need to be crystal clear on. Make sure she's genuinely single. Because here in the Philippines, there's no such thing as divorce. This leads to a situation where millions of women are in a sort of limbo. They are still legally married, but often haven't had contact with their husbands in decades. Now you might ask, why should you care? Well, it's essential to give you a heads up about some pitfalls you, as a Westerner man, might not be familiar with. The culture and the laws are different here. And as the saying goes, forewarned is forearmed. So sit back and let me clue you in on what you're in for if you give your heart to a married Filipina. I like also to address a point that keeps irking me. Whenever I make a video like this, I inevitably receive a bunch of accusatory comments. People claim I am being biased, that I'm only portraying the Philippines or its people in a negative light. To that I simply say, terms like the Philippines or the people are already too broad. In my videos I make it clear that I'm not talking about everyone. I point out the potential issues. I'm not tarring everyone with the same brush. I explain that there are cultural differences here that you should be aware of. Things that are different from your home country. Today I'll probably catch a lot of flack for warning about the dangers that can arise from dating a married Filipina, but that's precisely why I'm doing it. There are things you need to know to avoid getting in hot water here in the Philippines. Things that might not be a big deal in the West but can have serious consequences here. You can quickly end up in jail or get extorted if you get involved with the wrong woman here. Thankfully, it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. Consider me your lifeguard. I see a shark in the water and want to warn you. But that doesn't mean I'm closing down the entire beach. So I'm not stopping you from going into the water, I'm just pointing out the risks. How you handle that is ultimately up to you. The risks I talk about are manageable if you know the facts. But how did Philippine women even get into this complicated situation where there are so many separated but still legally married women here? Well, first off, marriage is a big deal in the Philippines. Nearly every Filipino wants to get married, and unfortunately many do so in their late teens or early 20s when they are practically still kids themselves. At that age, they often don't fully grasp what makes a relationship work. And Filipino husbands seem to have a knack for pulling a vanishing act as soon as problems arise. Many Filipinas find themselves with a marriage certificate and an empty bed while they are still in their 20s. So what's next? As one of the few countries without the option for divorce, they suddenly find themselves in a sort of martial limbo. They can't legally separate from their ex-partners, but they also can't start a new healthy relationship. The only available solution is an annulment, which is essentially the same as a divorce, just much more expensive and time-consuming. An annulment can literally cost over $10,000 and take years in court. And here's the kicker. There's no guarantee the annulment will even be granted after you shelled out the cash. Needless to say, most Filipinas don't even have that kind of money. So they just separate from their husbands and resign themselves to the fate of never being able to marry again. Unless, of course, they meet a guy who's willing to invest time and money to clear up the issue. I know how easy it is to sort of slide into a relationship without consciously deciding to. You meet a woman, show her your place, spend the night, maybe even enjoy a long weekend together. And because you're having a good time, you just let things unfold. Who can blame you? Back in the West, it's not like an attractive young woman wants to move in with you right after the first date. But that's something that happens here in the Philippines way more often. However, if you go into this blindly, you're settling yourself up for a rough landing. At this point, I need to stress that I'm not saying all married Filipinas are just looking for someone to open their wallet and rescue them for poor life choices. But there are some women out there who try to obscure the situation until you're emotionally invested in them. That's why I want to show you the tactics that get used. There are three main ways a Filipina will inform you about her marital status. Some women straight up admit they're married, although it's unlikely written on their dating profile. They're not trying to hide it from you, they might just be hoping that you're clueless about the future can of worms this could open up. They put the issue aside, just like many Filipinos do, with the thought of addressing it later. A later that never comes. The second group of married women are those who flat out deny being married. They operate under the assumption that their husbands have long since vanished from the scene and that you will never find out. They advance your relationship to a point where, once you discover the truth, you're emotionally and perhaps even financially in too deep to just walk away. I know many of you are probably thinking, oh my goodness, I'd be out there so fast I wouldn't even cast a shadow. But you would be surprised how many guys, once they are head over heels, simply grit their teeth and sidestep a lot of heartache by agreeing to finance the annulment. Now let's go to the third strategy, which is the most reprehensible of them all. It's rare, but you'll probably find folks in the comments who've been through it. Sometimes a married Filipina and her husband deliberately target an unsuspecting foreigner. They lure him into a relationship with the wife, all to extort money from him. Because here in the Philippines, adultery isn't just illegal, it's punishable by law, even if a woman has been separated for years. If you are in an intimate relationship with a married Filipina, that still counts as adultery. And even though many foreigners turn a blind eye to this unpleasant fact, all it takes is for someone to try to capitalize on the situation, and you're in deep water once a lawsuit is filed against you. In moments like these, you truly realize how different the laws and culture here are. So you should always be on your toes and get a grip on the local legal landscape to dodge any nasty surprises. Sometimes it's just the husband alone who hears a rumor that his wife is hanging out with a foreigner. You know how gossip spreads like wildfire here, so that the whole town knows who's cozying up with whom. Maybe it's some of his family members or friends who spot you together. But trust me, it can be really tricky to keep the husband in the dark about what's going on. And how he reacts to the news is anybody's guess. If for some reason he reacts angrily, you should be aware that we have a crime of passion law here. If someone catches their spouse in a compromising position and kills them in the heat of the moment, they won't be charged with murder. Cases like these might be extremely rare, but is it worth the risk? And then there's the notorious annulment scam, where a woman tells you how much she wants to share her future with you, if only she weren't married. If your relationship has already reached a deep level of attachment, you might be tempted to send her the money for the legal separation. Of course, in some cases, both the money and the woman then vanish into thin air. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of sincere and loving women here. But it never hurts to keep your wits about you and do your homework, especially in a country where the rules are a different ballgame. At this point you might be thinking all this sounds pretty scary. But what can you do if she's lying to you and you have no way of knowing she actually has a husband? Fortunately, there are some simple things you can do to protect yourself in the short and long term. First off, use your noggin before you're in too deep. Ask questions. Listen closely to what she says about her past relationships and keep an eye out for any signs of a hidden husband. Keep all emails or text messages where she claims she is single. If you don't have any, ask her to send you or make you a voice recording stating that she is not married. It might sound a bit unromantic, but consider it a safeguard. Because if you've been deceived about your girlfriend's marital status, you're off the hook when it comes to adultery charges. It's like having an insurance policy. You hope you never have to use it, but it's good to know it's there. So while love is wonderful and all, a little caution can go a long way, especially in a place where the rules aren't what you're used to. Alright, there's something you can do right away, while you have the time to ask her for a CENOMA form, which stands for Certificate of No Marriage. It takes about a week to get one and costs around 200 peso. Your girlfriend can apply online or spend a bit time at the PSA, the Philippine Statistics Authority, and get this document that definitely answers the questions about her current marital status. Also ask her to show you an official ID along with the CENOMA form to ensure that the names match and you get a photo ID. In the Philippines, an official ID always has a photo. Official IDs include the SSS card, Social Security System, which every working Filipino has, a driver's license, the postal ID from the Philippine Post, which takes around 4 weeks to get and costs 500 peso, or an NBI clearance from the National Bureau of Investigation, which you should opt for since it takes only about 2 days to get and costs less than 200 peso. Because trust me, your lady friend will probably tell you that she doesn't have money for these documents. The birth certificate won't cut it as it doesn't have a photo. And you can also get it from the PSA. This means your girlfriend could easily get the CENOMA and the birth certificate from a sister or cousin with a similar name, and you'd accept it none the wiser. Because there are often these excuses like, that's my nickname, or I use a different family name. If everything is done correctly, all the names will match and you'll be on the safe side. So there you go. Knowledge is power, especially when you're navigating love in a different cultural and legal landscape. Let's say the Filipina you're interested in is upfront and tells you from the get-go that she's married. What do you do then? Does that automatically spell the end of your relationship? I can't answer the question for you, but I know a lot of guys grapple with this very issue. Is she worth the effort and the cost of an annulment process? Some women are, some aren't. That's really up to you. As I've mentioned before, many guys don't sweat it because the estranged husband is far away or has already started a new family. You could of course play fast and loose with risk, but most of us would rather be on the safe side, and I totally get that. So there you have it. Relationships are always a bit of a gamble, but being aware of the stakes is your first step in playing the game wisely. So if you decide to foot the bill for an annulment, I'd strongly recommend getting involved in the process yourself. Discuss everything with her lawyer, review all the documents and court records, and check the costs. If you can pay the lawyer directly, there's less chance the money will get diverted for other things, like maybe her mom's sari-sari store or her brother's farming dreams. But as I said in my video about single mothers, if a married woman isn't for you, it's easier to weed her out before you get emotionally entangled. The issue is, sometimes you are so fixated on the woman you're chatting with, by the time you find out what a headache the whole process is, you're already too deep in. Instead of pulling the plug, you decide to stick it out in the relationship. Remember, forewarned is forearmed. If you're aware of the complexities up front, you're in a better position to make informed decisions that work for you. So keep your eyes open and your wits about you, alright? Look, I get it, loyalty is important. But wouldn't it have been smarter to go for a single woman right from the get-go? If you find out upfront that she's married, then the ball's in your court. But if she hides it and you discovered it later, I genuinely don't see why you'd stick around. She has lied to you, so as far as I'm concerned, you're under no moral obligation to continue the relationship. And naturally the question arises, what else is she hiding? In a case like this, don't try to fix things. Save yourself the trouble and make tracks. Remember, integrity and honesty are cornerstone virtues for any meaningful relationship. If those aren't there, you're building on shaky ground. So keep your wits about you and tread wisely. And let me extend my respect on behalf of all the men who've fallen in love with a married Filipina and helped her gain her freedom. Hats off to you. You've done something most level-headed guys wouldn't these days. And I'm sure the woman by your side knows she's got a keeper. We can only hope that the proposed new divorce legislation will eventually become law. But as we all know, the wheels of politics grind slowly. So until then, my advice for your first communication with a new Filipina would go something like this. Hey, I'm Götz. Are you legally married? It may not be the most romantic icebreaker, but hey, it's a practical one. You're covering your bases right from the get-go, and that's a smart move in a place where the rules are a little different. And that's about it for today, folks. I hope you've picked up a thing or two about the local scene, so you know what to watch out for. I'll be back in a few days with new videos. But before I sign off, here's a quick tip. If someone calls you offering to speed up your girlfriend's annulment for, let's say, 80,000 peso, promising an express service that's twice as fast, ask yourself, twice as fast as what? When they reply, not sure, but for an additional 40,000 peso I can find out, no, it's a scam. A legit lawyer will have standard fees. End of story. Besides, the best advice you'll get here won't cost you a dime, not even 1,000 peso, and it's straightforward. Better not date a married woman unless you've got the funds for it. Now, before I flip the switch and call it a day, remember I'm kinda like your virtual bartender. I listen to your comments and questions, offer advice where I can, and hopefully produce content that's a good watch for you. All I ask in return is a small tip in the form of a thumbs up for this video, subscribing to my channel and sharing this video with your friends. It takes only 10 seconds and would totally make my day. Thanks for everything, and until next time, take care, bye bye.